meeting. The time 6:29. Sorry for giving you a heads up. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Will the clerk please take roll?
Trustee Blackstone,
Here.
Trustee Moore,
Here.
Trustee Barrett,
Here.
Trustee Moyer,
Here.
Trustee Cannon,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Daley.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have one amendment, and that amendment is to postpone resolution number 25-2026, a resolution of the town of Wellington setting the compensation for the municipal court judge to August 11th, 2026.
All right, we will postpone item E2. Is there a motion for that change in a second?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest on the agenda this evening? Now is the time for community participation. If you have any public comment, you are welcome to sign in on the sheet behind the podium and state your name clearly into the microphone. These are for non-agenda items. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide comments.
Sarah Brown. I just wanted to take a few minutes, I know as we get ready to look at the Parks Master Plan, to take a few minutes to thank you for prioritizing this for our community and our town. This has been an ongoing process. The last Parks Master Plan we had was in 2015, so this was way overdue, and it was a good time for our community to look at needs. And so I think our previous board also needs to be recognized for taking that time, and for you all as you look at this to really acknowledge what our community has said, the impact that they've shared, the resources that they're looking for. And so we're super grateful for your time and energy with this.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
And then if you would like to, it's the first action item. So if you want to provide any more specific comments during that time,
Okay.
feel free to
Perfect.
after the presentation as well. Thank you.
you.
Is there any more public comment this evening? On to our presentations. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the first presentation title?
Fiscal year 2026 personnel requests follow-up presentation.
This will be presented by Patti Garcia, Town Administrator, Nick Redavid, Finance Director, Town Treasurer.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Patti Garcia, Town Administrator. So during the development of the 2026 budget, a hiring freeze was put into place for 3 vacant or board appointed or approved staff positions. Those positions are listed in your packet, and Nick Redavid will be going through those. This was put into place in order to mitigate any fund balance spending in the general and park funds. So we were looking at opportunities to make sure that we were not going into fund balance, and this was one way we were accomplishing this, is by putting a hiring freeze in place. Staff advised at that time that a mid-year review would take place. So this is where we're at. Several of you are brand new and hadn't been part of that budget process. So the information, some of it might be new. So feel free to ask some questions during Nick's presentation or afterwards. But Nick will be providing an overview of the various positions, where we're at related to revenues, and then I'll follow up with a recommendation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Board of Trustees. Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Garcia. I am Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer. Tonight's presentation will briefly recap the decisions made during development of the budget of fiscal year 2026 regarding 3 vacant positions. provide an update on current conditions, and present staff's recommendation for the board's consideration. My goal is to provide information and data to support the board in their decision-making process. When budget development began last year for the current fiscal year, 2 staff positions were vacant and 1 new additional position was requested. This slide contains all 3 positions, as well as maximum possible benefit and employer expenses in alignment with conservative budgeting practices. Since it is unknown where in the hiring salary range a new employee's salary will fall, as well as what benefit elections will be made by the employee, maximum estimates are utilized during the budget development process, as well as this mid-year review and analysis. The 2 vacant positions in Public Works Administration are funded largely through administrative overhead transfers from the enterprise funds. The civil engineer position would support capital projects throughout the enterprise funds and organization. The former fleet and safety coordinator position was being reevaluated to meet the department's evolving operational needs, potentially providing analysis and support or management of operations and/or facilities. The position in the Parks Department was requested when the board reviewed staffing levels with Human Resources last year. At that time, the board agreed to increase staff to 64.75 full-time equivalent or FTE employees. This position was intended to support maintenance of the town's park system, as well as preparing for upcoming additional responsibilities when the town assumes responsibility for Cleveland Avenue. The board last approved an increase in FTE in 2024. After careful consideration, town leadership recommended a hiring freeze for these 3 positions as budget development continued, choosing to remove funding from the budget. As you will see in a few slides, even after removing funding for these 3 positions, the general fund and park fund put forth budgets with operating expenditures exceeding revenue, requiring use of fund balance in both funds. While the public works positions are predominantly funded by overhead transfers in the enterprise funds, it should also be noted that the sewer fund's net position is currently being addressed as identified in the municipal utilities rate and fee study last year and reflected in projected rate revenue increases over the next few years. The next 2 slides outline projects and responsibilities that may be affected by the hiring freeze. I want to be clear that all statutory, regulatory, and legal obligations of the town are still being met by staff currently. Additionally, the hiring freeze does not mean that these responsibilities and projects are automatically canceled. Leadership continues to review and prioritize. Leadership continues to review and prioritize projects and responsibilities and look for ways to optimize efficiency. These examples are provided by leadership in Public Works and Parks, and staff remains committed to delivering the highest level of service possible within existing resources. While the hiring freeze does have costs to projects and departmental functions, both of which are important, reviewing the budget and financial trends year to date is equally as important when deciding the future of these positions. Hiring staff for these roles will create ongoing obligations, and understanding the net operating costs provides context for the forthcoming recommendation. While expenditures in both the general and park funds are under budget year to date, and general fund revenue is currently exceeding projections by 18.5% overall, additional analysis is needed to determine whether this performance represents a sustainable trend sufficient to support additional ongoing staffing obligations. Overall revenue in the park fund is under projection year to date by 3%. Given the size of our town and the ebbs and flows of revenue due to the weather, sports seasons, commercial activity, and several other factors, determining a reliable trend only 1/3 of the way through the fiscal year remains challenging. A deeper look into general fund revenue shows that we are 2.7% behind projections in sales tax revenue, 37.5% behind projections in building materials use tax, and 12.5% behind projections in investment earnings as interest rates have dropped. I would also note that accounting changes related to motor vehicle use tax were implemented this fiscal year to comply with voter-approved 2021 ballot language. These changes increase general fund revenue while creating an equal offsetting reduction across the street and park funds. While current results are encouraging, staffing decisions create reoccurring expenditures that extend beyond a single fiscal year. Lastly, sales tax revenue, along with property tax revenue, is one of the town's two largest revenue sources and was projected to grow by 5% in 2026 over 2025. Year-to-date, sales tax revenue growth is approximately 2.3% year over year. This trend is generally consistent with regional activity, with Larimer County reporting approximately 3.5% sales tax revenue growth through April. And with that, I'll turn the presentation back over to Ms. Garcia to discuss staff's recommendation in light of the operational impacts and financial data we reviewed this evening.
As much as I would love to fill these positions and provide staff and, opportunity to continue on other projects, I think we really need to focus on a few other areas first. And one of the things that the board has talked about is some revenue generation, and that's related to economic development and other ways of gaining some revenue. I have asked the team to look at opportunities for operational efficiencies. So how can we do what we're doing now? Can we do it better? Can we do it simpler? Can we do it with less steps? As many of you know, I'm taking a certified public manager class program. I'm involved in the program. And then one of the things that we worked on this past weekend was process management, which all of a sudden, I was like, oh, we can do this, we can change this. So I had a lot of ideas, but I think that's something that, we've done things the same way for a lot of years. So maybe there's a way, some efficiencies where we can help save time and maybe reduce staff time on certain projects or certain activities. I would be recommending that we maintain the hiring freeze for now and reassess those positions during the 2027 budget. Human Resources is currently meeting with department heads to talk about what their personnel requests might be for 2027. So everybody is still inputting and providing information to Human Resources, which will then get filtered down to the leadership team and myself to start making some decisions or making some recommendations for the board for the 2027 budget based on where our revenues are at. Do you all have any questions for myself or Nick?
Let's start with Trustee Cannon. Do you have any questions for the presentation?
No questions on my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Barrett.
No questions. I agree with the assessment.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions. Thank you, Patti.
Trustee Blackstone.
No questions. I would just say that I appreciate taking a kind of a conservative approach to these positions. I think one danger is seeing a need for a couple months and then realizing, hey, we need to reevaluate and let somebody go after a couple months. That's something that I worried about in the past. So I just appreciate that that way of looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Moore.
Only one question, and I don't know how appropriate it is to ask. If the redistribution of that workload is to fall on the existing staff, will there be compensation or thought of incentivizing that workload?
Not at this time. Not at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Moyer.
I do have one question. With our completion of the audits, thank you, Mr. Redavid. Has that been factored into this consideration as far as the sales tax that's generating for us and the budget for these positions? The possibility for them, I do agree. I completely think that we should be conservative at this time, but I'm just wondering if that's something that you all have added into the equation.
The results of the audit just showed that our revenues and expenditures were right on track, that we are doing everything correctly. It didn't change what our revenues might look like. Am I misunderstanding the question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
you understand?
My understanding was there were funds that were held up by not having those completed.
yeah.
And so with those funds, have those been factored into the equation once
Yes.
they're released? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
I always feel strongly about making sure that staff everywhere in every organization where each employee feels supported and appreciated. I don't think that we lack that necessarily. So I also want to extend how grateful I am for you guys seeking more efficiencies and making the town run better and improving processes. I do appreciate that so much. The thought of doing more with less can only happen with an amazing, amazing group of people who are loyal and love our town. So I appreciate that so very much. I hope that we can work out and make sure we have the support as needed moving forward. But I understand this decision, and ultimately, you know, we're here for a vision and policy. You are leading the organization from that perspective. So I have complete confidence in that. So thank you for that recommendation. Thank you for the presentation.
And they do. The staff here is amazing, and you know that, and you all have seen that. And if I could give them all 5% raises and incentives and things, that we would do that in a heartbeat. But they are committed, and we probably have the best team I have ever seen working for a municipality. They're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. The next presentation will be the proposed Highland Cemetery Rules and Regulations presented by Hannah Hill, Town Clerk.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Hannah Hill, Town Clerk. Tonight before you, we have some proposed rules and regulations for the Highland Hills Cemetery. I wanted to start this evening just with an overview of the cemetery. It's been quite some time since anything related to the cemetery has come before the board, and we also have some new members, so I wanted to make sure that we're building the foundation, all starting off on the same foot with the same information. I also wanted to highlight some current projects and goals that staff is working on before we dive into rules and regulations. And then I will be asking for specific board direction on several items as well. For those who aren't very familiar with the cemetery, the Highland Cemetery was created around 1906, and currently the town owns, operates, and manages all the lots in the cemetery. Staff is very proud to provide service to this rural space of Wellington's history, and we look forward to improving our management of the cemetery throughout the coming years. Currently, the cemetery has just over 1,700 grave spaces, and the town does also own the L-shaped boundary that you see around the exterior of that picture on your screens. For the past 5 or so years, staff has been working on a plotting project or annexing in that cemetery or the cemetery into town limits. We would like to add additional spaces or provide different options, different size options for individuals in our community who may be looking to have a cremain burial, which is a smaller plot size than what we currently have, which is just a full-size casket size grave space. In order to do so, we would need to annex into the town in order to provide those updates to the cemetery. So that is our #1 goal for the cemetery. We also are looking at updating our signage and mapping. We have on kind of a longer range plan, updating our landscaping area, maybe having a seating where visitors to our cemetery can go to sit and reflect. We do really want to pursue working with Wreaths Across America, which is an organization that provides wreaths for over the holiday season for our veteran grave spaces. And we also would like to look at, along with the landscaping seating area, working in a remembrance brick program where that landscaped area would be paved with bricks and individuals could purchase a brick in memory of someone. There is also on your long range CIP plan, a columbarium, which is a above ground structure for burials. It's like one of those cement looking structures that you see in some cemeteries. It just, again, offers another option for individuals wanting to make use of space in the cemetery. I also wanted to highlight how staff is currently managing the cemetery, as well as where we're going in the future, mainly because I'm very excited about some software that we just purchased. Currently, or when I got to the town, staff did have to work on maybe 7 different documents anytime we had to do any action in the cemetery, whether that was selling a grave space or conducting a burial service. You're seeing in the upper right-hand corner kind of the more gridded map. That was one of the many maps that staff would have to refer to before we did any work in the cemetery. We would also have to go to the cemetery physically, sometimes with our customers, which we don't mind doing because we do see that as very excellent customer service and we look forward to continuing to do that. But if we have a customer who's not in town or not able to make it, it becomes a little bit more of an administrative burden just to conduct all of that information together just to make one sale. Staff did purchase EverSpot, which is a cemetery software, and this will make our administrative processes a lot more digital and much more modern. On the left-hand side of your map with all those different colored grids, that is a rough screen capture of what the administrative side will look like. We can click on one of those spaces and see immediately if someone owns that space, if it's available, who owns it, if there is already a burial there, who might be buried. All of that information and all of that data is captured in one location. And eventually there was also a possibility for having this map public facing. There is also the possibility with EverSpot to do kind of like a Google walk to, so you can search for somebody and then a little icon will pop up and direct you to where that individual is laid to rest. The EverSpot program also has eventually, this is not a high priority for staff right now, but in the future, it will offer us the ability to take pictures of everybody's headstones or memorials that are in the cemetery. And we can also assign those to each of those little colored grave spaces. So if someone has a family member or a loved one in the cemetery and they aren't able to make it here, they can still see that information at a glance. As we start to look at the proposed rules and regulations, I do want to note that Public Works has done and continues to do a wonderful job maintaining the operations of the cemetery. We're excited to be in a place administratively where we can meet their great customer service levels from an administrative background. You will see in your packet that the last rules and regulations, as far as town staff can find, are from roughly the 1980s. If you're looking at that 1-page kind of 8-rule document, and then you're looking at the proposed rules and regulations, there are 11 pages. So it's a lot more rules and regulations, right? I do want to point out that that is covering a roughly 40-year age gap in time. The world is a different place, cemeteries are managed differently, and we want to be sure that not only are we meeting regulations for today's day and age, but that we're also meeting the needs of our community. There are many sections in these proposed rules and regulations, and I'm not going to dive into all of them, but I will highlight a few. And then I do have several areas that we would like specific direction from the board on, either a thumbs up or thumbs down or different comments. After board discussion and direction, we will make any of those changes needed, and our plan is to bring back a resolution for adoption on a future agenda. If there's general consensus, we do plan to bring that back on the consent agenda just for the sake of time, but if we do need to bring that back for action or further discussion, we're happy to do so. What I've learned from working in older historic cemeteries is that sometimes a picture is worth 100 words. In the case of my presentation, sometimes they're worth a couple hundred. So none of the examples and the pictures provided to you are from our cemetery, but we did want to show you real life examples of visual, physical aspects of why these rules and regulations might be needed. Highland Cemetery is very rural and has a prairie atmosphere, and our goal is to keep it a peaceful place for all of our community and those who make use of the cemetery to enjoy and to reflect. The proposed rules and regulations are similar and very consistent with what most of Colorado municipal cemeteries have, but we did strive to make sure that we're allowing for that more rural aspect of Highland Cemetery. Section 1 through 5 are very administrative in nature, very typical of what municipal cemeteries have in their rules and regulations. But I do want to call out section 5.0.2, which would note the requirement to plan for any activity in the cemetery be conducted through the city clerk or the town clerk's office. Not because we want to limit in any manner any memorials or services or events taking place in the cemetery, but we do want to ensure that we're being respectful of all of those who have plans in the cemetery and make sure we're not double scheduling and making sure that we're allowing enough time in between those particular events, whatever they might be. We also want to make sure that we're allowing enough staff time and preparation for any cleanup that might be needed. Section 6 is more related to actions during an interment or a burial. We wanted to call out specifically what actions staff is able to make and what we're not able to assist with, such as assisting with a funeral burial or installing a monument. We are also calling out when interments are able to be scheduled. This is consistent with how we are currently doing our operations, with the exception of Sunday burials. In the past several years, we have not had any requests for a Sunday burial. And most municipalities do not allow Sunday burials. In section 6.7, I will be asking for a specific direction from the board. We do not currently require any individual's remains to be placed in a specific type of vault or container. The majority of our interments are conducted through a funeral home, which do require caskets, urns, and vaults. Having a vault or a burial receptacle is very industry standard, and it is required by most all municipal cemeteries, especially in the Denver metro and north area. Requiring burial vaults does reduce settling, and it also improves maintenance and maintains a level appearance throughout the cemetery. The picture before you does note a casket vault. However, staff also recommends urn vaults as well. These are again standard for industry and already generally required if working for a funeral home or working through a funeral home. This does allow standard sizing for opening a space as well as protection of the urn if other grave spaces near it are being opened, and settlement within neighboring spaces, especially in an older cemetery like ours. Section 10.1.2 is regarding fences, rails, or other border types around family blocks, and I do want specific board direction on this as well. The proposed rules before you note that these types of fixtures would not be allowed, and staff would support this due to the nature of these items degrading over time, lack of maintenance over time, and difficulty in overall maintenance of the cemetery. The wording before you is very industry standard, and if the board approves this, the items already in the cemetery would be grandfathered in until the point that those items are degraded and needed to be removed for maintenance or safety reasons. Sections 7 through 9 are very industry standard, with the exception of the request for payment in full to any services taking place. Staff would strongly recommend this as a regulation due to recent neighboring municipalities having issues with vendors who are conducting services with the intent to pay on their way out of town, and payment is not received. Those municipalities are currently backtracking and adding this into their regulations, and we would propose putting it in before we have this issue. We want to be very understanding due to the nature of the services provided in the cemetery, but we also are selling a service, and we need to make sure that the town receives the payment for that fee. In section 11, staff sees issues and concerns with various small trinkets, plastic and glass items, and items being hung or draped in the cemetery. With the wind and other maintenance that is in the cemetery, as well as other various events, memorials, or people visiting their loved ones in the cemetery, these items may create safety hazards, and they may interfere with maintenance operations, and under certain conditions, they may provide a larger degree of fire risk. We are asking for board direction on allowing solar lights and live plants. Solar lights are generally made with glass and small plastic pieces. They're also generally lined the grave space, so it's a little bit harder to conduct full cemetery maintenance. The last section that I'd like to call out is section 12.1. Foundations are the cement block that a memorial company places under the headstone or a monument. Requiring these, again, is very industry standard, and they do increase the longevity of a headstone. They also make maintenance around the memorial smoother and consistent. If we make a callback to our 1980s rules, it does note the time that there is a time limit to place the headstone after an interment. After discussion with other cemetery or other municipalities who manage cemeteries for the ease of maintenance, we would propose keeping that time limit on installing a memorial after interment. I did want to note that most municipalities who manage a cemetery generally have half a dozen or so phone calls throughout the year about individuals who want to order a headstone online and place it in the cemetery, either through a company or through themselves. Staff would recommend not allowing that. While online orders might be less expensive, those materials are generally, they have a shorter lifespan. They do degrade much quicker. They're generally just coated with something, and then once that coating degrades, the memorial degrades. And they might not be structurally sound. Current operations already, excuse me, current operations already require a permit application to be approved to the town by the town clerk before the placement of a monument. And we would request continuing that as a regulation, as it is consistent with other municipalities as well. And it allows us to coordinate the placement of those monuments, making sure that we're not double booking the cemetery. I think I skipped a slide. Nope. We would recommend discussion, and then our next steps would be, depending on what the board decides to approve eventually, we would work with the communications department to conduct mailings for those that we have in our cemetery database, as well as do a social media campaign and town newsletter notices or signs in the cemetery, so everyone is aware of the change in the rules and regulations before those actually take place or we start enforcing those. I am happy to answer any questions or speak to any other sections of the proposed rules and regulations. The items before you are what I do need to make sure we have direction on. A vault requirement, yes or no, allowing family blocking or fencing and bordering, solar lights, live plants, and any other comments the board has.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Obviously, if it's over 40 years old, we've never had this brought to our board before. So with that said, we're going to start with vault requirement and provide any kind of questions or preferences, and then just go around the room. Let's start with Moyer, please.
Sorry. My only question about this requirement is because of the concrete, I'm wondering if it's cost prohibitive. And the last thing that I would want to do is keep someone from burying a loved one at home because they can't afford to because of our restrictions. So that's my concern with that. It is more expensive. And I mean, that's my concern with a lot of these things, is I just would never want it to be so restrictive that we are making it impossible for those that can't afford these upgrades to be able to bury their loved ones where they have been or want to be forever. And I don't know if that's a question.
All right.
More of a
Let's
statement.
hold
I
them.
do
We'll
understand
go
what you're
around the
getting
room
at.
for vault, and then I'm getting the questions together. Thank you. Trustee Moore.
I think, maybe disagree a little bit in that, a vault requirement would make, I don't know. I think it would make it so that if we're the only space that doesn't require a vault requirement, then other municipalities would flock to this, and then we would be limited on space moving forward, like into the future. Do we know what other municipalities have? Are they leaning towards? Is everybody vault requiring, and we would be the only ones not?
The majority of municipal cemeteries require vaults, caskets, and urn vaults, especially in the Denver metro and northern Colorado area. Those who do not require vaults are generally more mountainy towns
Mhm.
who also have older cemeteries. Their cemeteries are generally not plotted out as I'm not an engineer, I'm probably saying this wrong. They're not gridded out as straight and as equal to what our cemetery currently is, just because they're older and more of a mountainous region.
It's not something that I've had to deal with at all, fortunately. So I don't know exactly what like how cost prohibitive it is or how it's not. But I would like to follow along with the standards so that do you get to pick where you bury your person, like your loved one, or can you pick and choose? Okay.
You can. So if you're interested in purchasing a space, either pre-need or at time of need, Angela, my court clerk, would work with you to look at the available spaces with our new software. We're going to be easily able to show you where in the cemetery those spaces are available. If there are a couple different answers to that question, I guess. For the most part, yes. There are a few other requirements, like if you have an oversized casket, we might have to move you to a different space that has a little bit of different width on the sides or has two spaces next to it, so we can accommodate that as well.
Thank you. That helps.
Trustee Blackstone.
I think Trustee Moore kind of hit what my main question was going to be, which is this, and you mentioned it in your presentation, is this what like the standard is? Because I think with something as delicate as, you know, end of life and this sort of topic, I think we do want to be just above board and doing things correctly. I can 100% appreciate the cost thing, and potentially that may be something we can look at as far as are there ways to help folks out. I feel like that's something. I guess my only other concern would just be making sure that we're not also kind of trespassing on someone else's religious belief, whatever that may be. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I feel like that's something that should be noted in this conversation, that we're being respectful to everybody's beliefs. I don't know how vault requirements go. Both of these things, whether is this the standard, you know, kind of in Colorado and federally, and being respectful, I feel like hits all of these. So I figured I'd just bring it up on the first one. Yeah, my view is I would just want to do what is the industry standard. So
Great.
that's my question.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, actually, so this is in regard to section 6.7, and I'm going to briefly touch on 12.1 because it's kind of related, I think. So I certainly understand the 120-day requirement for headstone placement. That's already in our current code, but I do share the same concerns that Trustee Moyer had, which is that I certainly don't want to make anything cost prohibitive, you know, regarding burial vaults or headstone foundations. To Trustee Blackstone's point, I don't know if, you know, if maybe there's a program we could put into place to help folks out if they aren't able to afford such a thing. But I do want to keep that, I think, at the forefront, especially our aging population and that sort of thing. I don't want to put them in a position where they would not be able to afford burial. So,
Thank you. Trustee Barrett.
So I understand we live in a region that has a lot of weathering, so I can see how over time it can deteriorate the conditions of a place without that, and I can understand why it's become pretty standard in a lot of areas. But my question is, are we actually experiencing those maintenance and safety issues at this moment in time, or are we just following the lead of other areas? Because we do live in a more prairie oriented, it's pretty flat here compared to a lot of regions in Colorado and Denver. Denver, I would say, has actually more hills than us. So I do wonder if that is a factor. But casket damage too, that's kind of like a personal risk that someone who's purchasing a plot would take. That is their own personal assessment. As far as maintenance challenge, I'm just curious if we actually are encountering those, or if people are having any actual issues at this moment in time. Or do we anticipate because how old is our, how many plots we have, how old are the plots that we do currently have? And is there like a correlation? Like, is there a time frame when you start to see the deterioration? How, are we approaching it? Like, other municipalities probably are. So I'm just trying to gauge is like,
Sure.
are we just kind of following the lead? Do we need to, or are we actually acting, being proactive about something that is going to become an issue for us?
Sure. So let me see if I can capture all the questions and concerns that I've heard so far. As far as maintenance issues in regarding like the temporary decorations that are being called out in these proposed codes, I would say yes, staff is, they are currently a concern. We have had issues currently. We're not being proactive about it. What is proposed is very industry standard, very much so what other municipalities, especially in northern Colorado, require. And I understand we're more rural. We did try to edit out, and we're happy to go back and try to edit out more as well. That would still allow less maintenance concern, but give more leniency to those making use of the space in the cemetery. For the vault requirement, I understand what you're saying, where it is a personal choice. From an administrative perspective and maintenance of the cemetery, it's not necessarily if the casket is degrading for that individual. It's if we have an older cemetery and as the ground settles, if we open up a space next to that casket, the land and the caskets have shifted. And so if you have it in a vault, there is more protection for the casket and the individual inside the casket, not necessarily if that, it's not a personal preference, I guess. It's more of if it's shifted and if we are making use of the space next to it, how are we also protecting the one that's already interred? The cost, vaults do have an additional cost, absolutely. What I will say is that in the 2 years that I've been here, I don't want to say 100%, I would say 90%, because I might be missing or forgetting one, of our burials go through funeral homes, and they generally require vaults already. The ones that do not, I would say staff would feel strongly that all of those who are being interred in our cemetery are provided the right for a respectful burial. And there are reasons for every rule. I would be happy to look at what we have, and maybe these are the requirements and we also have an appeal process. That way someone can say, this doesn't work for me for whatever reason. And we could add in kind of a exception clause. Okay.
That's a good idea. Trustee Cannon.
Well, I'm in favor of the vaults. This is people's final resting place, and I've seen older cemeteries that, you see depressions in the ground and headstones that are tilting and so forth like that. That's because the stability of the soil degrades over time, as well as what's interred there degrades over time. A vault will keep that, would delay that tremendously. It'll make the cemetery more attractive to the people who are coming to visit their loved ones and so forth like that. I think if someone coming to pay their respects to a grandparent or something like that and look to the right and they see a sunken grave, and look to the left and they see decorations blown against the fence, I think the there's a lot of value with having a vault in there for stability, for liability, for our public works staff to have to dig that hole, and let's say they disturb the grave next to it and something shifts, and I just don't want to see anybody have to go through that.
I feel like a grave site the purpose of it is remembrance for a very long time. forever, perhaps is the intention for a grave. So ensure that that could be the case of all would be necessary, just to make sure that lasts. And we do have these issues in our cemetery right now. There are several headstones that are leaning and a lot of deteriorating things. And I know that has to do with at some point to vault. So I would recommend that we require vaults. I think when it comes to fees or costs to it, we can review, and we always do as part of our budget process, the fee schedule. So what actual fees are determined by our town. But otherwise, I think it is up to, the folks who are doing that ceremony to find what is within their price range. So, but I would agree that we should require vault. I'm going to take, after this discussion, the other questions I heard, the concerns are whether it's cost prohibitive. I would like to know as a follow-up during budget time, what our fees are compared to other municipalities nearby. Are we, it's weird to say competitive. And then for those are the fees that we control, right, aren't external to us. And then I just want to acknowledge that we are experiencing issues related to not having vaults now. So those are the follow-ups I had, but we answered most of those questions during the time. So can I get a thumbs down, sideways, or down? You can live with it. You're in favor, can live with it, against it for a vault.
And just for clarification, is that with an exception appeal process added in, or?
Let's
I
go
will
with
bring back some options.
Yeah, and
work on
then
the wording.
maybe consider that for the other
Okay.
part.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, can you be more clear about what that means?
Well, right now, we're just kind of considering the presentation as provided. So we can provide direction for follow-up, but let's just go through these questions first. And then in the other comments, we can provide additional direction on what we want to be considered for the resolution. Okay, we're going to go a little quicker because this is taking a long time. And a lot of the points that we've made are relative to each one of these. So fencing or bordering, in my opinion, that takes away from the look of the entire cemetery and it makes it harder to get around, which I'm always with a grandma or somebody, and is really hard for maintenance. So that's my opinion. Anybody else have any quick comments on that that are different than what I just mentioned? Yes, please.
I think my whole problem with limiting or requiring is taking people's right away from being able to decide how they want to let their loved one rest forever. And so I come from a family that has very fenced plots. And to me, that has always kept us together here on land and eternity and given us something special that is ours, no matter if you're dead or alive. And so I would hate to take away that option for people if they feel that it's important to keep their family together in that way. And so with all of these, I can be persuaded and I can compromise, but I do feel strongly about several of these things based on past and present experience.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments? Yes, sir.
Ms. Clerk, just one clarifying comment. It did sound like you were mentioning that if fencing was in place for a current gravesite, that would stay there.
It would stay there until it degrades to the point of safety or maintenance concerns.
Understood. So these would not retroactively apply to existing sites. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
My question is if there is a preference for someone to have a fencing around it, could there be a designated area of the graveyard where it is a uniform fencing where everyone, so it's not impeding on the shared space, and inconsistent with the appearance of the graveyard. So if there were an option where you can have a designated area, but also, the pricing would have to reflect the continued maintenance because it is indefinite cost being, accrued. So that would have to be something that it be considered with the pricing for a fence. Would it be a yearly maintenance fee? I don't know. What would the options be for something like that? But it is a it is burdensome to have fences and additional maintenance done around them. So that is, I think that's something that would have to be considered in the pricing for the fencing if we were to even allow it. But I think it would need to be a designated area because you want consistency and uniformity, you know, because you need to respect the other graveyards that are sharing the land too. So that's my only input. Otherwise, I would say no fencing.
Any other comments? Yes, please.
I wonder if there would be alternatives to fencing and something that could be in ground as an option, something like recessed lighting, like solar lighting or surrounding bricks so that you can have the hypothetical of enclosure without actually having a structure. So like I saw in the presentation that there's an option for putting bricks that are engraved. Could you do that? Something that a lawnmower can ride over without it being an actual fence that would like the view and how you want the aesthetic of the cemetery to be, but also providing an option for people who want that kind of space.
Sure.
That's
I don't have answers for those two questions. Let me get with Public Works Department and we can have those follow-up discussions when we bring it back.
I do know separately, though, within the rules that the bricks around it are prohibited as of now, as it's written, including any other surface adding to the gravesite. So, but that's a consideration.
Yep, we'll look at that.
No other comments? Take a quick vote. I'm sorry, thumbs up is yes fence. Well, this is a bunch of no answers for you there.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, my stance would be that I would be fine with us restricting fences going forward, just as long as current grave sites are not disturbed.
Should we maybe include this as part of the appeal process and have the location as a part of that question? Okay, let's bring that up for other comments real quick. Solar lights, same exact thing in my mind. It's another concern about maintenance, something to run over, to destroy or to replace on accident for grandmas to trip over as they're walking through. It's already hard to walk through a cemetery. I think that we should make it as prairie-esque as it is intended to be, as the vision of the cemetery is. So that is my opinion. Anybody have opinions other than that one that they want to share? Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Cemeteries have been around as long as people have, and they've not always had these rules. And I just feel like it's one of the most personal choices that any one person can make for themselves or any family can make for their loved ones, to bury their loved ones as they see fit. And I have a really hard time, whether it's industry standard or not. We want to grandfather in these fences that were there because we want to respect them, but we don't want to respect future fences that people want to put around their loved ones. I just find it difficult to tell anyone this is how you have to do it. And I will say, I really appreciate the appeal process as an option because I think that puts standards in place but allows flexibility. If someone feels strongly about something and they're willing to fight for it and they're willing to go through the process to request something different, and we are actually willing to look at that and consider it and say yes when it makes the most sense, and when the people are very passionate, then I can get behind whatever. But tombs have been falling forever, and fences have been there for hundreds of years. And that doesn't change the fact that these people are laid to rest by people that love them, and people continue to visit them, and people visit their neighbors. So that's what I have to share.
Any other comments? Also, our cemetery is closed. It's only open from dusk till dawn. So by the way, during nighttime, people are prohibited from being there. Also, I do want to note that for lighting. So, all right, thumbs up for allowing solar lights. Can live with it or no solar lights.
Well, Was it presuming that thumbs down is no solar lights? Just my quick opinion. The solar lights are kind of chintzy and nobody replaces the batteries in these things half the time. And again, to your point, nobody's in the cemetery at night anyway. So I would say no solar lights.
Sorry, in the way that when I imagine in my head, when you go to pick a casket for your loved one and you pick the ceremony and you pick what people say, is that not a standardized way in which we can include solar lights? So where somebody can say yes or no, and then that's included in the cost of the burial. If you cannot afford it, then it's not, then you cannot, or you can choose to add it later. But a kind of checkbox, and we can agree on the standardized version of what that looks like, still giving people the option to opt in or opt out.
We have to consider maintenance and overtime too, because these are for forever, right? So when the solar light stops working, do we contact them to replace it, have them pay for it, So that's really difficult too. So just something as a consideration there. Based on our vote, we're going to go with no solar lights. I think the appeals process should be pretty open-ended in which people can make a claim for anything that is really necessary and then it will be considered and then placed appropriately, perhaps within the appropriate site for such a thing. Moving on to live plants, and this is assuming that there is a receptacle for that plant. Is that correct? Or is that a live plant planted in the ground?
Live plant planted in the ground.
Okay.
If I may,
Yes, please.
I'd like to start off on this one. I'm with the American Legion, and this past Memorial Day, we went there, and there are plants in the ground covering, obscuring grave sites. And look, we had the Girl Scouts there, the Boy Scouts there, and the American Legion there, and we were trimming that back just so people could see that tombstone that no one has looked at in 50 years or so. We don't have the staff to maintain the cemetery the way it is, and all of these things have to do with maintenance. The vault requirement, it makes it easier to mow, makes it easier to maintain that. Fencing, everywhere there's a fence, there's weeds coming up around it, and then that takes more time and effort. Solar lights, the same thing. The live plants, I'd say no to the live plants. I mean, having a tree and there's a couple of 2 or 3 trees out there, but these plants that just grow without anybody maintaining them, and once a year a volunteer trying to cut it back because we can't afford to send staff members out there to maintain our cemetery. I mean, we've got a hiring freeze. We just talked about that earlier there. So no, I would say no live plants because, we don't want somebody planting a fruit tree over somebody's grave and hope to eat the fruit sometime.
Yeah, let's also consider that it is very harsh weather and conditions out by the cemetery. It's windy, hot. So what plant they plant would be something we would have to control for it to not just die and look horrible. And again, it's a community space. Oh, yeah. So I am thinking no on that. Anybody have any contrary opinions? Sure.
I mean, if we're considering no temporary decorations, fake plants, fake flowers, things like that, and we say no live plants, how does one recognize and honor on days of remembrance or visiting?
I'm happy to read through and kind of wordsmith the temporary decoration section a little bit more. The intent would be absolutely not to limit placing mementos, including fake flowers or live flowers, however that might be on someone's space. It's more the temporary decorations speaking to like solar lights or shepherd's hooks or glass vases or metal containers, like ceramic figurines that might get tossed about in the wind and break and be an item that someone could step on and get injured on. So those are more of the items that we're looking at with temporary decorations. We absolutely still want people to come and pay their respects and reflect and lay something on the grave space if that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the document right now, and as it's written now, live plants are allowed as long as they're within 12 inches of the headstone. And if they're properly maintained, are we considering taking that out? Is that kind of what's
Yes.
in
Yeah.
front of us? Right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I just need to see.
All right, live plants, yes, live with it, no. Oh, Brian, so slow, jeez. Okay, the other comments I have noted is that we would like an appeals process for any very strong opinions against any of the current rules to be considered. I would like for that to be administratively approved, not something that comes before the board. That would be my consideration. The other one is the wordsmithing regarding the temporary decorations. Those are the two other comments I heard. What are other comments? Yes, sir.
Section 5.0.2 about the special events and services and other organized activities within the cemetery. The American Legion is going to be out there once or twice a year,
Absolutely.
want to pay their respects, want to, plant flags on veterans' graves and so forth.
Which
The
would
the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts will be wanting to do that too. You've probably heard this before, but I want to make sure that everybody hears this as well. These three organizations take a lot of pride in service members' lives and their families and wanting to honor that. When they look out at their cemetery, and our cemetery is okay until you start looking close, and then it looks run down. It looks ragged. It's trashy. I mean, overgrown. A lot of things going on, and they want to help. And I understand that there was some request about, should we trim back this? Should we pick up the trash? Should we do these kind of things like that? I would recommend that maybe staff get together with a kind of a policy about what is allowed and what's not allowed. So
volunteering, you mean?
yeah, for the volunteer groups that want to come out there and do that, there was a question about, well, we can't let them do that because there's liability against town property. Okay, well, let's evaluate that and to see if what they're doing is so liable to the town that we could be in trouble, or is it just something we'd rather them not do, So I would just say if we have some kind of prepared kind of arrangements or policy guidelines and something like that, this is what you can do and so forth like that. And this is how we can assist you with this. And I think that would just make the whole process a lot easier because there's a lot of back and forth going back, especially this past year.
Sure.
Thank you.
I understand. And we absolutely want to continue to encourage that. That's one of our goals with the cemetery. We absolutely want to honor, pay our respects to our veterans as many times as we can throughout the year. So we'd love to work with them more.
Maybe definition of special event too, because when 10 people get together to, salute the flag and do that process, that's not a special event. What we're talking about is a significant event in my mind, including like multiple burials on the same day or something like that. So maybe we should need to define what special event is clear and probably have more of a streamlined special event process for cemetery because a lot of the regular special event things don't really apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would not want to put it through that process.
Right.
It's more of a, in my mind, I guess, an administrative heads up. We're holding this in the cemetery. Can you hold the cemetery?
Like a
They pay for
reservation.
this. Yeah.
Maybe we could
like
treat it more like a
reservation.
park reservation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Trustee Cannon, for bringing that up. That was my major point in all of this. I didn't realize I was so adverse to the other things until we began speaking, and I got emotional. So, I've been working with the Legion for a while on the Girl Scout project, and I think as I was going through the packet and thinking about it, exactly what Mayor Daley spoke of in terms of a process, an application process, perhaps if someone wants to do something special, hold not necessarily an event, but do something special in the cemetery where people will gather and it will be some type of remembrance or celebration. If there's an administrative application that people can fill out and go through with staff where, you know, it's temporary, there's a time limit. Do you want to, the Girl Scouts I know wanted to paint rocks and did paint rocks to recognize the veteran graves. And we don't want to discourage that type of community engagement. But maybe there's a time limit on how long those things can stay, or, you know, so I'd really like to see some type of process, like you said, that was in place where we can still allow that type of engagement and collaboration, and honor what our community members want to do, but it doesn't interfere with the maintenance, and we still keep it controlled in the way that makes sense for the town.
That makes sense from a policy perspective. Also, all of our volunteers should have liability waivers and be, you know, official volunteers of the town, in my opinion. So not as the extent of me being a coach, that is hard to do. Yes.
Just have one more. I'll try to be really quick here. Section 5.1, presence of animals other than service animals. I presume that under the special event permit process, the American Legion often does a riderless horse to honor those who died in line of service and that sort of thing on Memorial Day. I'm presuming that would still be authorized from a public event or a special event.
We'll wordsmith that section as well. and we
Okay.
can
The only
have
questions then, the only other question I have in that line is, as far as pets attending services, do we, there is nothing that prohibits pets attending services currently. And I guess I would just throw out, if it was the wish of a rancher to have his last cattle dog or something attend his funeral, I would prefer that we saw an exception for services. Just throwing that out there.
Should we take pets out?
Obviously, we want to ensure that folks clean up after their pets, and that needs to be noted as always, but
Yeah.
Could that be in the appeal process of Board of Adjustments for cemetery?
If I may, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to look at that section and we can wordsmith it a little bit more.
Okay.
I see your point, Mayor Pro Tem Mason. Let me get with our Public Works team and see what our concerns with the animals are. That's in there just because it's industry standard. So let me wordsmith it a little bit and see if we can either remove it if we don't see a viable need for it, if we're just trying to be proactive, or if we can bring it back a little bit more open-ended.
Great.
thank you.
Do you get all the direction you need?
I do, yes. If there are any other comments, I'm happy to take them. I really appreciate your time tonight. I know it's a serious and emotional subject, but
Yeah.
we are looking forward to taking care of the cemetery and moving forward with the 21st century. So I appreciate your time.
Okay, any other additional comments can be emailed to our clerk if there's any follow-up items, and those can be then consolidated and distributed to the group before resolution time. Everything else is going to be emailed. Thank you. Moving along. All right. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Oh,
Madam Mayor, may I read the titles? really
Yes,
quick?
please.
June 9th, 2026, Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Resolution number 2026, a resolution authorizing funds for contractor services for water meter installation.
I repeat, I move to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. On to our action items. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title of E1?
Resolution number 24-2026, a resolution to adopt the 2025-2026 Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces and Trails Master Plan and Community Center Feasibility Study.
And I think Kershaw will be presenting on this item.
Yes, thank you. I know you were all expecting somebody with a little bit more hair, but you got me today, so. Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. My name is Eric Henschel. I work for the Parks and Recreation Department as the Operations Supervisor. And yeah, we're gonna go over our post master plan and community center feasibility study. Thank you for the opportunity to present the final post master plan and community center feasibility study. This work represents a comprehensive review of Wellington's parks, recreation, open space, trails, and future community facility needs. Tonight, I'll summarize the planning process, key findings, strategic initiatives, and the recommended next steps for implementation. Before we begin, I would like to recognize and thank Barry Dunn for their expertise, guidance, and partnership throughout this process. Barry Dunn provided extremely valuable input and assistance during the entire process. We appreciate their collaboration and dedication to this effort. This final document is included in its entirety in your packet, as well as an executive summary that we intend to use as a practical tool moving forward, helping communicate the plan's vision and supporting our efforts to pursue grants, build strategic partnerships, and identify funding opportunities that will help implement the master plan recommendations over the next decade. Since we last presented, we've completed several rounds of review and refinement with the input we received from various stakeholders. That feedback resulted in several meaningful enhancements to the final document. Some of the key additions and improvements include further analysis and modeling of the library as part of the potential community center concept, community gathering spaces, event spaces, supporting amenities, and a strong emphasis on trail connectivity. We also strengthen coordination between this plan and the ongoing transportation and mobility master plan to ensure we work towards a more connected Wellington. As we discuss the recommendations this evening, it's important to remember that this comprehensive planning effort is intended to help shape approximately the next decade of work for the Parks and Recreation Department. The plan is designed to provide direction and flexible, allowing future boards, staff, and residents to adapt to changing needs while remaining aligned with the community's long-term vision and goals. So why this plan matters: Wellington continues to experience significant growth, and with that comes increasing demand for parks, trails, recreation programs, and community gathering spaces. This plan is important because it helps us protect the quality of life residents value while providing a practical, actionable roadmap for future investments. It ensures that decisions are driven by community needs and supported by data. This master plan was developed through a comprehensive planning effort that combined technical analysis, system assessments, demographic trends, and community engagement. The process was designed to identify both current gaps and future needs, providing the town direction moving forward. One of the strongest messages we heard throughout the planning process was that recreation, community connection, and overall quality of life remain top priorities for Wellington residents. Residents consistently express support for maintaining our parks, expanding recreation opportunities, increasing trail connectivity, and creating spaces that bring people together. The analysis revealed several other important findings. First, Wellington's park system performs well overall, but opportunities exist to elevate the system to exceptional. Second, the trail network continues to grow, but still contains important connectivity gaps. Third, while many park amenities meet population-based standards, access and distribution across the community is uneven. We also identified service gaps in certain areas of town, the need to balance recreation and conservation goals, and the importance of improving walking access and equity throughout the system. Based on those findings, the plan establishes a series of strategic initiatives designed to guide future investments and decision-making. These initiatives focus on improving access, enhancing connectivity, expanding recreational opportunities, preserving community character, and ensuring Wellington can meet the needs of both current and future residents. So for action, this section begins translating strategy into a potential implementation. The actions identified provide a clear framework for prioritizing projects, allocating resources, and measuring our progress. These recommendations are intended to be realistic, phased, and achievable, allowing the town to move forward in a deliberate and sustainable manner. For programs and services, the next set of actions focused on continuing to build and enhance the recreation services, specifically related to the programs that the community requires. These efforts are designed to address service gaps, improve user experiences, and ensure investments align with community priorities identified during the planning process. And last action here, I believe, last action here. One of the most impactful opportunities that was identified in this plan is the potential for a community center. Community feedback consistently highlighted the need for additional indoor recreation space, gathering and event spaces, community programming, and opportunities for residents to be connected. While the concept and pro forma will continue to evolve over time, the analysis shows that a community center could be a key catalyst for advancing multiple community priorities through one strategic project. There was one more action. Here we go. So an important theme throughout this plan is that the parks, recreation, trails, and community amenities are not just quality of life investments. They're also economic development investments. Communities that invest in these assets are often better positioned to attract and retain residents, support local businesses, strengthen property values, and create places where people want to live, work, and spend their time. These investments help reinforce Wellington's identity as a vibrant and desirable community, delivering benefits that extend well beyond recreation and parks alone. And the last one now, actually, community engagement and communication. Successfully implementing this master plan will require more than projects and funding. It will require continued community engagement, strong communication from us on how we're doing, and meaningful partnerships. Throughout this process, residents help define the priorities that shaped this plan. As we move forward, it will be important to continue listening, communicating our progress, and working collaboratively with the community, organizations, regional partners, businesses, and other stakeholders who share an interest in Wellington's future. By keeping those partnerships and shared priorities at the forefront, Wellington can build momentum, leverage opportunities as they arise, and make steady progress towards the vision created through this planning process. Our next steps from plan to action. Tonight's potential adoption of the master plan is an important milestone, but in reality, it's just the beginning of the work ahead. Following adoption, our focus will shift towards implementation, developing staff work plans, refining priorities, and incorporating recommendations into budget discussions. The adoption of this plan will also allow us to begin developing our 5 to 10 year capital improvement plan, starting with the 2027 budget process, helping us align future investments with the community's priorities. We will also begin developing park and trail standards that can serve as a comparison document, or excuse me, a companion document to the master plan. The standard document will provide technical guidance for the planning, design, development, maintenance, and operation of our parks, trails, and amenities, future and current. Just as importantly, we will continue building the relationships and partnerships needed to move these initiatives forward. Whether through grants, regional collaboration, community organizations, private partnerships, or future development opportunities, successful implementation will require a shared commitment to the vision outlined in this plan. Again, I'd like to thank the board, the Prost board, town staff, Barry Dunn, and the many, many residents who contributed their time and feedback throughout the process. Together, you've helped create a plan that positions Wellington for a strong and connected future. And I'd like to welcome any questions that you might have.
All right, to the board, this is the time to ask questions for understanding. Any opinions on it we'll save for deliberation after hearing from the public. Okay. All right, are there any questions about the plan itself? All right, we've seen it many times, or like leading up to this point. So it's not that we aren't interested or care enough to ask questions. It's that it has been so thorough and transparent that we have, and to the public, that has been presented to us at some capacity so many times. So I'm feeling very knowledgeable at this point. I now invite the public for comment. Specifically, I'd love to hear from someone from Prost in more detail. Yeah.
Sarah Brown again. I'm a member of Prost. I've been on the board a little over a year and a half, I believe. Time flies when you're having fun. I was able to jump on the board a little before we started the Prost Master Plan. And so it's been a really neat experience to walk through this process within our community with all of you as trustees and mayor and then also with the Post Board. Having the opportunity to speak face to face with our community is essential. That's something that I feel like is really important to hear what their needs and concerns are, and that doesn't change once this master plan is adopted. It's a continued conversation. I've been in Wellington since 2012. We were originally East Siders. We are now West Siders, but I can acknowledge the lack of connectivity that is a huge concern for our town. And that's not just when it comes to our parks and recreation. That impacts our economics and the feeling of community. I'm a firm believer that the more time we spend together face to face, the better off we are. And I think that that's something that our community is really looking for and searching for. The fact that a community center and not just a recreation center was put forward is a huge part of building that face-to-face experiences. I'm looking to increase our library space and provide more gathering and more educational opportunities. Really gives me goosebumps, if I'm being honest. And so I think that everything, all the questions that we've asked, all the conversations we've had, whether it's with all of you, whether it's with staff, I think we're really proud of what's been put together. Barry Dunn's been an incredible partner, coming in, asking questions, getting out into the community. And so it's pretty impactful to see it all presented in one place. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well that you might have.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions. PROS has been integral since the very beginning, and they've had this presented to them just as many times as the Board of Trustees, if not more, from other interactive steering committee style like sessions. So thank you so much for your work on this process.
Thank you. I know it's been a privilege for everyone on our board.
Thanks. All right, any other public comment on this item? Okay, back to the board. This is your opportunity to provide any opinions or comments on the plan. We will go one by one. We'll limit our comments, so try to keep them concise, and then we'll proceed to a vote. Trustee Blackstone.
Yeah, I think what I want to say the most is that this master plan, as I've seen it, is not a product of this board or previous one or staff, or even to some degree the Prost board. This is a direct response to what our residents are saying. I would say, like, thank you again to Barry and Dunn, because I feel like we had a solid outreach to our community. And they were able to tell us what we want. And something like this that is this major, that we're talking about a master plan for the future of Wellington, that's the work that needs to be done. I even, again, like in response to the conversation earlier tonight about needing to pull back on staff for the town, when we're talking about additional revenue beyond just like sports for the town. These are real action items that we're actively taking, and I'm very just happy and proud that this is the way we're moving. I think it's the smart way. And the last thing I would say is that, after the 4th of July, our Independence Day celebration, I had a friend from out of town, and I got to show her the town of Wellington, and I think one of the best days of Wellington. We got to go between the two parks. We got to see the parade and the fireworks, and I'm more proud of Wellington when we are coming together. And I want to see more of that. I want to see people at a community center. I want to see people, out and about, getting connected between the east and west side, which I hope that's not a thing we're calling each other ourselves. But I think that this is something that makes Wellington great, and I appreciate all the work that our Pro Sport has done. And I'm thrilled to be on the board at this time while it's happening. That's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Cannon.
In 2024, I was excited about adding the pros master plan to the budget so that we can get that process started. I remember we gave up a couple of things just to make sure we could get that done, and I'm glad we did, because this is a roadmap for our future. And I agree about the economic development. If we're trying to recruit businesses and manufacturers and create jobs and so forth like that, one of the attractions within a town has to do with a lot of that recreation and those opportunities that come with that. It makes Wellington more appealing when we're recruiting businesses and industry to our town. But more importantly, as an East Sider, I always feel connected to the West Siders. But I've got to go underneath the interstate to get over here if I'm riding a bicycle. So I like the idea of the connectivity, the trails and so forth. I love the plan and I can't wait to get started. Thanks.
Trustee Moore.
Super excited that this is moving forward and that we're moving past the data collection initial, questionnaires and all of those touch points, just like you said, Trustee Blackstone, that all of those touch points really reflect what the community wants and what we've been kind of clamoring for, and it's coming together. I'm super excited to be a part of it and get to sit here. I think that's one of the things that made me really excited to be a part of, the Board of Trustees, is to get to participate and sit at that table, this table. So really happy to look into the future and see how we move forward with it. It's a super cool process. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Barrett.
You all should be so proud. This is fantastic. I've lived here for over a decade and I've already felt the benefit of all the work that PROS has done in this community and created a place for me and my family your work is what brought me to the Board of Trustees. Your work is what brought me getting to know everyone in this town. My loyalty to our businesses comes from the work you guys have done. And this groundwork, the work is never done, but this is a tremendous step, a tremendous leap in the right direction. I know we felt stagnant there for a second, but I think this is the work that needs to be done. We're talking about our changing demographics. We're talking about our diversity growing, and we're talking about keeping residents here, not just keep them here, buying houses, but keeping them in town, changing this from a place from where we go to sleep to a place that is actually home. This is what does that. And this is what makes people stay here. And that's what businesses want to see when they're looking into our town. They want to see a place where people will stay here, not just sleep here. And this is the work that's going to make that much. It's fantastic. I'm really, really excited about this. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Trustee Moyer.
I've expressed my excitement over our planning over the last few years, and I just think this sets us up to be so strong in the future, a year down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. And so I'm really excited to have this be done and look forward to implementation. When we were beginning Safe Routes to School for Wellington, we partnered a lot with Mr. Bird and Mr. Cooksey to look at the safety concerns throughout our town. And a big piece of that was the connectivity. And so to have this plan in place where we can not only be able to connect West Side and East Side, but to be able to make sure that our kids are safe going to school and that we don't have the gaps that we currently have for families to bike, from this festival to that park. And it's so, so important. I reiterate what Trustee Barrett shared about that's one thing that's going to make people be drawn to us. That's one thing that gives us our character, is that connectivity. And so I'm just very excited to see this happen. And I'm really grateful for the work that you all put in and for the security it's going to give people from age 0 to 99. Thank you.
Very good point. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a whole lot to add here to the comments, wonderful comments made by the board already, except let's never hear the West Side piece again. Let's never do that again. But other than that, I do want to say, I just want to give a big thanks to our community stakeholders. Obviously, I know folks get pretty overwhelmed with surveys and that sort of thing. Folks, these are the things that get us over the finish line, and it tells us what you want in your future. So I really appreciate the community coming together, getting that done. Obviously, the Parks Rec, Open Space and Trails Board, Director Cookty, and the rest of staff getting this together, and obviously our partners at Barry Dunn. So thank you guys very much for helping us get this to where it needs to be.
I can honestly say that within this plan, there's nothing that necessarily shocks me. Having been engaged with InPros, they've had a wish list or priority list for years, even before I was involved. And each one of those points are acknowledged through this plan. So the community has, they know what's going on. And then the fact that this can be backed up then with a statistically valid survey, with excessive community outreach, and it comes to these conclusions of exactly what our town needs, makes me feel very confident in proceeding with these plans and seeking these solutions for the community, because it is indeed what our entire town needs and wants. So with that said, I overwhelmingly support this, not to mention all the other benefits, from mental health to feeling like you're belonging, and just being active and participating in our community. This is going to allow that, not to mention extra services that might be available and opportunities for our youth and those who are aging is a good point, because regardless of who we're targeting, these facilities will serve everybody in our community. So with that said, and all the comments given, may I hear a motion?
I move to accept Resolution 24-2026, a resolution to adopt the 2025-2026 Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces and Trails Master Plan and Community Center Feasibility Study.
Second.
Trustee Moyer was. And roll call, please.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. We are moving on to action item 3. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title, please?
Ordinance number 04-2026, an ordinance clarifying effect and timing of ordinance number 12-2024 and ordinance number 2-2026 relating to capital investment fees for existing approved developments.
This item will be presented by Megan Smith, Cody Bird, and Nick Redavid.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. I have a bit of a double header this evening, and mine are a little more business related than nearly as fun and exciting as the Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Master Plan. Tonight I have before you, this first presentation is presenting ordinance for 2026 relating to capital investment fees for existing approved developments. Now, as a reminder, this ordinance was first presented to the board at an April 14th regular meeting and then was discussed again at a June 9th work session. Following that discussion, the board directed staff to return with the ordinance as originally drafted. So for anyone that's following with us this evening for the first time on this topic, I do want to emphasize this ordinance does not establish new capital investment fees. Those fees were previously adopted by the board with an effective date of April 1st, 2026. The purpose of this ordinance really is to clarify how those updated fees would apply to developments that had already met a substantial progress point before that April 2026 implementation date. So that main clarification to define in that point is what is a pipeline development. And we are defining that as projects that prior to that April 1st, 26 date had received final plat approval and recordation. I struggle on that word, had executed a development agreement or memorandum of agreement for public improvements, or had submitted a complete permit application, building permit application. So for those qualifying developments, the ordinance establishes a time-limited transition period where those eligible developments would continue paying the prior capital investment fees through March 31st of 2030. That was too many threes. The previous capital investment fees through March 31st of 2030. And then beginning April 1st of 2030, those developments would then transition to the capital investment fees then in effect, be it those that were adopted and went into effect April 1st, 2026, more than likely updated fees that will be updated between now and that point in time. So as discussed during the work session, staff really undertook this review seeking to balance two objectives. We are looking to ensure always that growth contributes towards utility infrastructure costs, but we are also looking to provide some fee certainty for developments that had already made significant commitments under the previous fee structure. Adding on to those points, staff's financial analysis really indicated that maintaining development, some level of development activity during a defined transition period is actually more impactful to the funds than scenarios where projects may be delayed or deferred. Meaning transitioning to the current, pushing forward with the April 1 effective impact fees, which may then have an impact of slowing or deferring development, has a much larger negative impact to the funds than being able to proceed with some level of development even at the prior capital investment fee rate. So in summary, this ordinance was to provide clarity, establish that clearly defined transition period and end date, and reflects the approach previously discussed by the board. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Now's the time for questions for understanding. Any deliberation will happen after we hear public comment. Are there any questions on the item as presented? All right. Is there any public comment on this item?
Hi, board, mayor, trustees. Thanks for being here. So, Darren Roberson, Sage Homes. All I can say is, I think I'm the only developer here, but I know from Ron at DR Horton and other developers and builders, Bassler Homes, it gives us assurances that, we can go out and invest money, invest into Wellington, and know that we have a landing strip or a timeline before things are going to change, which is really huge for us to be able to have that confidence and know what our fees are going to be. So if you guys adopt this, it definitely helps bring more developers here, more builders here, and gives them the confidence that they'll be assured that fees aren't going to change overnight. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment? All right, back to the board for deliberation, or any other follow-up questions based off that testimony there. Let's start with Trustee Moyer.
Thank you, Mr. Roberson, for being here to represent the developers in town. Obviously, we appreciate the investment into our town infrastructure, housing, and we want to be good partners. So I support this in terms of honoring partnerships that were put in place before we decided to increase these. And for any concerns that development does not pay its way, I want to assure the public that it indeed does. And we are watchers of that, keepers of the information. I don't know how to say it, but we have our eye on that piece and we are constantly watching. And we too want that, but we also want to honor the commitments we made in the past. And so for that, I would say I'm in favor of this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't have any questions really, so to speak. I did just want to highlight for the public, we made a very significant change to impact fees this year in February, which were implemented in April. So I just want folks to understand that the reason, one of the big reasons for us doing that is to not catch our development folks off guard and ensure that they, like was mentioned here earlier tonight, that there is some predictability about what it is that we're doing, and we're not just pulling the carpet out from under folks. So just wanted everybody to know that, and I absolutely support this. So,
Trustee Moore.
I support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Barrett.
I think that this is fair. I think that it helps our developers plan accordingly, and be able to have a path that they can see. This creates security from both ends. And I think it is important that we have good relationships where we take care of each other. And I think this is a perfect example of that. So I absolutely support this.
Trustee Blackstone.
Yeah, I would start by saying I appreciate that the previous Board of Trustees did push this off and let the new board that's going to be taking the heat for this decision give us time to understand it more. And especially after the working session that we had, I think that was important to inform the board and any community members that wanted to learn about why we're considering this process. As Trustee Mason mentioned, this is not just, every year things go up as they do. This was a special kind of readjustment on our fees, kind of above and beyond what is fairly typical. And again, this was something that we discussed fairly at length in that working session, about why this is even on the table. And I think that, again, kind of what we're discussing, as the other trustees mentioned, does make our developers that are coming here and taking the risk on Wellington have, the assurance that the town is also, taking the risk on them to continue to develop here. So I think it's the smart move. If this was just a yearly adjustment and we had somebody coming in and being like, hey, you're getting too expensive, might be like, hey, well, yeah, so is everything else. But that's not what's happening. So I support it and I appreciate all the feedback. I think that's what got me over the hump.
Thank you. Trustee Cannon.
Thank you. I have no problems with the pipeline discussions with giving our development community some time to adjust and get on that. My biggest concern, though, is about the cash in lieu section of the ordinance. In 1983, when the town signed the contract, am I looking at the right ordinance?
That's next.
That's next. Okay, then I'll
That's
talk
my
about
second
that
header.
next. Thank you.
Otherwise, you support? Okay.
Yeah.
I think so.
My comments are that it's very important for us to be reliable, trusted, and good stewards of folks who are investing in our town. And then add that to actual financial view of the situation and determining that this is a safe and secure and a good path forward to ensure the revenues that the town needs to receive. And this is the best method to do so. Not to mention, while also being good partners and being consistent for folks who are spending a lot of money in our town. So I'm in favor of it, and I encourage that, and wish the best of luck to folks who are, again, investing in Wellington. May I hear a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 04-2026 in ordinance clarifying effect and timing of ordinance number 12-2024 and ordinance number 02-2026 relating to capital investment fees for existing approved developments.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes,
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
thank you much. Now on to the next item. If you could please read the title, please. Ms. Clerk.
Ordinance number 07-2026, an ordinance amending chapter 13 of the Wellington Municipal Code to authorize scheduled administrative updates to the cash in lieu rate, revise credited yield for NPIC shares, and discontinue acceptance of Colorado Big Thompson units for raw water dedication requirements.
And Megan Smith will again present on this item. Thank you.
Been so long. Again, Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. As just stated, I'm presenting this evening ordinance 7-2026, so ordinance -7-2026, which implements several recommendations from the Water Source Development Plan and incorporates policy direction that was provided by the board during May 19th work session. So the ordinance is intended to update chapter 13 so that our raw water dedication requirements better reflect current water market conditions and the town's long-term water supply acquisition strategy. So there's three primary components to this ordinance. We're looking to update the credited yield that are assigned to North Poudre Irrigation Company shares, establish a market-based cash in lieu calculation or methodology, and then further discontinue CBT or Colorado Big Thompson project units as eligible dedication assets. So we'll start by going through that North Poudre yield piece. So the ordinance increases that yield credited to North Poudre shares from 2.0 acre feet per share up to 2.2 per share, acre feet per share. And this recommendation comes again directly from the Water Source Development Plan and reflects a more representative yield assumption for North Poudre shares. And this is also primarily in part due to an additional water allocation type that North Poudre has defined that started with this water year, with a long-term average for that allocation piece being 0.2 acre feet per share. So this really updates that as being kind of new water found in the North Poudre system for their that has been decreed for domestic use or municipal use. Second, the ordinance limits future raw water dedication to North Poudre shares only and discontinues acceptance of CBT units. And the Water Source Development Plan clearly identified that North Poudre shares were as the town's preferred acquisition source, mainly, and concluded that CBT was not a preferred source, and that was mainly because of the losses incurred, so the actual physical water losses incurred by moving CBT through the North Poudre system for delivery to Reservoir 3, in combination with the additional fees that would be incurred by the town to move that water through the system. So those two, the loss of water and the increased fees made it such that the North Poudre shares were the preferred long-term acquisition path. This also aligns then that single dedication asset, creates consistency between the water rights that we accept, so the wet water we accept, and then that market data that we would use to establish that cash in lieu rate, which I anticipate some questions for. Third, we are defining a cash in lieu methodology as part of this ordinance update, as municipal code update, and it would establish this board-approved methodology for calculating the cash in lieu rate. This would be based primarily on verified North Poudre transaction data, with the ability to consider other regional transaction and independent appraisals to validate those market conditions. Now, the methodology would also require staff to consider actual costs to acquire, develop, permit, convey, and integrate future water supplies. And I really wanted to highlight that because this would require acknowledging that staff understands the need to do that. And if there are any point in the future that we would be looking at modifying the wet water or modifying the market-based research that we utilize to develop these, we would need to come back to the board in order to do so. So the goal is really to ensure that that cash in lieu rate remains reasonably tied to our actual cost of acquiring and securing that water. And I also wanted to kind of on that point, these updates, the board retains full authority to amend this methodology or establish or adjust the cash in lieu rate at any time. That requires a resolution or ordinance passed by the board. This does not strip the board of any authority to do so. Mainly, it just provides some administrative flexibility consistent with feedback that was provided through that work session, where staff would review the cash in lieu rate quarterly, update that accordingly January, April, July, and October. Those updates would be documented through a calculation memorandum that would be filed with the town clerk's office. So there's always a paper trail associated with any changes that are made. And then, of course, reflected in the town's fee schedule that's found online. Staff would also provide then an annual summary of any of those changes to the board during the budget process. Fundamentally, this really just simply allows staff to administer some routine updates using a board-approved methodology, assuming the board does approve it, rather than bringing periodic rate adjustments back through an ordinance process that can thereby lag actual market value rates, whether it's lagging and we're low on our cash in lieu rate, or perhaps things have remained steady and we're maybe a little high. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for understanding or clarification, please. Let's start with Trustee Barrett.
No questions.
Okay. Trustee Blackstone, please.
Just one question. Again, at that work session when we kind of talked about this, We talked about every quarter, every 3 months, but then if there was some extraneous circumstance that was like, maybe it's a month in or 2 months in, and it was like, hey, like water, something's going on. Does this also give you that power if there is, like I said, some sort of extraneous circumstance to make a change? Or is there something baked in that we're not held off and it's like, well, no, now we have to wait till,
April.
October, April to make this decision? Because that was something that we discussed.
I would have to look back at the specific, if the language, I don't recall specifically,
Fair.
if the language that's in the ordinance dictates those specific dates.
Mhm.
We could soften that language if that's the request so that it doesn't define that it would be on specific dates, but we were trying, it doesn't, say the day of the month or anything, but says,
Yeah.
in that month. I've historically not seen a single event
Okay.
that in a quarter, that's why we talked about it in a quarter time frame as opposed to twice a year. I don't think twice a year is enough to have to look at it. But we could consider if that's a recommendation.
Well, my thought process was empowering the team to make the decisions. And so I'm just, did we go far enough? If you're saying, hey, we got it covered, this is enough, then I'm going to take your recommendation. Again, it doesn't strip anything that was previously there. It's just giving you guys more tools. Again, we're bringing it back to the beginning of the meeting, those efficiencies we talked about. So I think you answered my question, and that's not something I would necessarily hang my, hat on one way or another. So.
God. Yes, sir.
Just so the board is aware, it is Part 3, Section A, review and update frequency. The CIL rate shall be reviewed quarterly and updated as needed. Any update, if made, shall become effective on the first business day of January, April, July, and October.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I was looking for that part too. I had read it and then I was looking in Section 2. Any other comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have any other comments on this. Obviously I was on the Water Source Development Plan Advisory Group, so I fully support the changes as far as that goes. I have no questions.
Sorry, and clarifying, any questions? I said comments, my mistake. Trustee Moyer.
Sorry, I was just looking through the language again to see if I missed something when I was reading it before. When you said preferred, NPIC is the preferred. So if someone, that's all we're going to accept. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So because the language is requirement and limit too. So, okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Moore.
No questions.
Trustee Cannon, did I miss you? Okay, not even, okay, thank you. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, public comment, please. Yes, sir, no? No? Okay. All right, moving on to deliberation on this item. Let's start with Trustee Cannon.
Thank you. Yeah, my concern has always been about, a cash in lieu policy that this town has traditionally just accepted as the way of life. I know recently we've started asking for water dedications in the form of North Poudre shares and so forth, but for years this town did absolutely nothing except take cash in lieu, put it in the bank with simple interest, and forget about it until 30 years went by and they tried to buy shares, and suddenly all the money we collected, which should have been buying shares all along, could not buy anywhere near the amount of water that we actually needed. So my concern is North Poudre shares are becoming more scarce, and the price goes up, when there's a demand on North Poudre shares. And my concern is if are just going to say, well, you don't have any shares, well, we'll take cash in lieu. Then it's on us to go out there and try to find the shares. And we're going to be driving up the price. We're going to be spending our time and efforts buying shares of North Poudre instead of requiring developers to bring water to the table. And that's my only concern. I don't want us to get back into this pattern of let's just accept some cash. Now, I know we've got future water source development plans that we're working on, but we're not there yet. We don't know what the cost is, and we don't know what those long-term infrastructure cost and everything else to purchase the water, to deliver the water and so forth. And even a carriage and storage agreement is still up in the air with North Poudre. So when that comes in, I would say we probably need to reevaluate this ordinance all over again, because now we've got something besides just North Poudre that we've got to consider. But my biggest concern is we can use North Poudre in perpetuity. And I would prefer that priority be made on North Poudre dedications, in the form of shares, as opposed to accepting a cash in lieu. That's my concern.
Trustee Blackstone.
Oh, didn't realize my mic was still on. Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts were that, you folks at the Public Works Department have stayed in line with the water source development plan, which is what, as board members, that's our job, is to present that vision for the town and develop that, and then for you guys to implement that in the best way that, with the tools that you have. Hearing Trustee Cannon, that really resonates with the position that I find myself stepping into on this board of there is, I don't want to say the issues that I have heard for the town of Wellington over the last 30 years. I would really like to make sure that we are as vigilant as possible, that we are not going down even a remotely similar route. I think that is something that just, I don't know what that looks like. But I would just echo Trustee Cannon's point. Yeah, again, it's a little bit out of my breath, but I don't want to see us making the same mistakes again.
Trustee Moore.
I think I would also mirror that sentiment in that. And I also recognize that there's a whole department of people who are more knowledgeable than us. So I like the idea of I'm on board. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Trustee Moyer.
Yeah, sorry, I'm over here scribbling ferociously. I would caution us to not compare ourselves, our staff, our board to boards and staff past. I think a theme of this year has been forward thinking and planning and being intentional about the decisions that we make. And it's clear through just needing to digitize our documents that maybe that wasn't the thinking of those that came before us necessarily. And so I think that it's important for us to realize ourselves as the more modern version, and that we are in a different era. And I think it's important to trust staff and the education that we have here, and realize that these funds, if they were captured in lieu of shares, which I love, would be updated quarterly, that requirement, because I think water changes all the time. But I think those funds could be used to diversify our water sources, and could help us to look at things like VITA, unless I'm wrong. I mean, we need to use them for water.
Correct.
So I think that, what that is determined to be should be an option. So I'm actually in favor of this. And I think that we can move forward independently as our own entity.
Trustee Barrett.
I am in general in support of this. I do understand the concerns regarding the cash in lieu methodology or method. All right, I'm not going to try that again. But I do see that we do have just a little consideration, regarding the count's top cost to acquire, develop, permit, convey. I don't know if we want to put a little more emphasis on that when it comes to our methodology. Just for a little more sense of security when we are the ones going to be going out and acquiring the water shares. So that might just be kind of the bridge there that might secure more confidence. But I mean, we already have, a far better staff than we, historic have ever had, So I think that I have a lot more faith that we won't go down that path already. But I do think I can understand wanting to have that security, knowing that we won't. So maybe, just maybe the wording on the consideration of the costs that the town accrues, a little more emphasis on that.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the concerns brought up by Trustee Cannon as well as Trustee Blackstone tonight. I do want to emphasize the point that Trustee Moyer made, which is that when it comes to execute on any diversification of our water portfolio, we are almost certainly going to have cash, right? That's part of the deal. So I also understand that Ms. Smith goes out and buys shares regularly. So I guess the question, I'm fine with this particular ordinance as it is. I think it gets us to a closer spot. I think maybe for a possible future consideration would be, do we want to require that town staff executes on X percentage of what would be share purchases versus keeping a certain amount in the bank for when it comes to when we do in fact execute on a diversification of the portfolio. I guess that might, Ms. Smith, maybe if you have a couple words to say on that.
One thing I can say, and I'd like to speak to for Trustee Cannon and others on that line, is that our municipal code currently requires dedication of wet water and allows for cash in lieu as an administrative approval. Okay. So that, staff keeps that in mind, as I agree, the wet water is far better for the town. And it generally is faster for them, easier. They can move quicker than the town can for purchasing. So it's better for the seller in the end for it to go to a developer. The place where it comes into play most often in my time here are smaller developments, not usually residential. Let's take, for example, commercial, where like their raw water requirement would be a fractional share, which is really difficult to come by.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows us to allow that cash in lieu at that time. And then to Trustee Mason's point, which I promise I'm not forgetting, to Trustee Mason's point,
I'm going to say my opinions first, but I'll get back to you.
and then administratively, there is consideration, and Director Byrd and myself and Director Gowing have had these conversations related to, there's going to be a point in time where there may be some point where even for large development, we want to have some X percentage of that be of wet water and some portion of that be in cash. And then back to Trustee Cannon, that will change as our source water changes. And so next week at our work session, we're going to have a presentation by Front Range H2O on the Vita Water Project, which is a potential diversification project. If we were to move forward with that, there would be some significant changes that would have to take place to our cash and lieu structure. Yep. So we would come back to you on that.
Okay.
But we didn't want to not come forward with changes that are appropriate to make now, because that decision could take several months, if not a year. And it could be a year. So
my comments are similar to Mayor Pro Tem Mason. Is the whole purpose of this case is to get cash in order to find and secure new sources of water. So if we're only using that money then to seek out MPIC, then that deceives that whole purpose of using that money to source new water sources, to get new water sources. So of course, there's going to have to be discretion there, and based on the development is what's available. As we know, those shares don't come up very often. So I wouldn't want to limit or require
specific like percentages or anything as of right now. It would have to be on a case by case basis, really, because maybe they won't be able to proceed until they could find water shares and hold up a project. And that would be a shame too, if everything else was moving forward. So, we have to go back to the reason why we're making these changes, right? This was part of our water source development study and plan as to how we need to go forward to secure water for hundreds of years for the town of Wellington. And those things, as we determined through studies, include getting more North Poudre shares and getting alternative sources of water. And that takes cash. So in this case, what we're accomplishing here is a fair way to determine the cash that's required to be paid based on market value. So we're not charging too much, too little. And then also, with the acre foot changes right there to make it more fair and accurate. So what I see here is everything I agree with. I acknowledge, right, when we do have a new water source, we'll have to reconsider everything. We will, but we're not there yet. And in the meantime, we should be saving. We shouldn't be spending all of our money and get to a point where, ta-da, we have a new source. It's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. Dang it, I wish I was saving money that entire time for this project. So we should be saving money for the project now. We should have been saving money for the project decades ago. But as of right now, I think we can solve that problem. So, but again, I think it has to be at the discretion of the development on a case-by-case basis as to what that balance might be, to be in favor of our specific goals and what's available to move forward, to progress all of our strategic plans through any of those kind of developments. So that's my comment. On this item, we do have rebuttals, so I will allow that. For rebuttals, of course, we're going to headline them, okay? So the major topic of what we may disagree with or have a question, additional question on, and we're going to go around from Trustee Blackstone and go around, and it will be a quick rebuttal, please.
Yeah. First, I want to say thank you guys. If I most misspoke, my point was more to say I don't want us to see the funds that are coming in now losing their purchasing power because they're being saved for so long. But I also appreciate your point of there's a benefit to saving. I think that's a line that we all cross in personal and and that was my point to that. Again, that's something that I just wanted to vocalize. I know that's something we're already doing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to be appreciative of the conversation. It is enlightening to have these kinds of discussions to kind of catch the thread of where I stand personally. But other than that, no rebuttal.
Trustee Moyer.
So with my habitat, we went to Milliken, and there was a family that had been waiting for 4 years for a home. And the one thing standing in the way was 1 share of CBT water. And so that's my personal story to just why I feel strongly about this. But if there's a concern about not capturing the amount of shares or leaning too far into cash in lieu instead of shares of water, there is the potential to cap the cash in lieu at a certain point, so that you can kind of satisfy both sides, and limit, I don't want to say taking advantage of the policy, but or the ordinance, but to provide a safety net, so to speak. And just a quick search, $248,200 is just the water cost for 2 shares of MPIC based on Google at this moment. And that doesn't include any of the other things that you were mentioning, the storage and the carriage and all of it. No, it's more.
1 share.
Have to buy 20 shares at $240.
240K per share.
And I just paid $225. That sounds a couple months ago on some.
$240K per share. Okay, so twice that. I mean, that's my point. It's a considerable amount of money. That's all.
Mayor Protem.
No, I'm good with the ordinance as presented. Thank you.
I'm good. Y'all make great points.
So I have some rebuttal. For first of all, those comments about trusting the staff, and yes, I share trust in staff, and that we've got one of the most professional staffs I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and I've worked with a lot. And but I've also been in a position where staff has had to search for those shares, and finding sufficient shares. If you, for example, you said 20 shares or something like that. Let's say you've got a 200-acre development, something like that, and it only comes with groundwater rights. It doesn't have any North Poudre rights and such like that. I don't know how many houses are going to be built there, but you're going to come up with how many shares you need of water, of North Poudre water, to make that happen. And if they can't find the shares, and we have, well, you could just give us a cash in lieu. Now we can't find the shares. That's my problem. That's the whole concern about this, is these shares do not come up. They're not commonly traded day to day. I mean, there's only X amount of shares out there, and municipalities are gobbling them up. You know, I think Fort Collins has got 3,400 shares or something like that, and they'll keep buying them up. It's harder for us, staff-wise, to find, locate, and execute the sale of a share because of the process that we have to go through, and it's time-consuming, and then somebody else can come in and they go out from behind it. Second thing, this is a direct rebuttal about the cash in lieu. The cash in lieu is based on a nexus of North Poudre shares, the cost of North Poudre shares. And any comments that we can use that water for other water violates that nexus and puts us in liability if we say, okay, you pay a cash in lieu and it's based on North Poudre shares, and we don't buy North Poudre shares, we're just going to stick it in the bank and buy something else with it. I think the developer could come back and sue the town and say, what are you basing that number on? So we have a nexus study, and I like the way the ordinance is written because it talks about the factors that goes into doing that. And I like the quarterly adjustments to that because the price does fluctuate and so forth like that. But any thoughts of us saying, well, we just won't do it, we'll save it for some other type of water, I think creates tremendous liability for the town. And so, you know, because of that, if we pass this, I would be pushing for a moratorium cash on lieu until we have that nexus study for the next source water development, so that we do not take cash in lieu. We take shares only for development, with the exception of, let's say, those commercial developments or those small infill developments and so forth like that. But I mean, we can write the conditions on that. But I still am concerned because I have been in that position where I'm trying to find shares, and it's almost impossible. As soon as somebody finds out you're looking for a share, well, I got one, I'll sell it to you for $285. Okay, well, you're not going to get it at $220 now. You're going to pay that much. Okay, then the next person says, oh, you got it for $285? I'll sell you one for $290. And that's how it works, you know, unless you've got, I mean, developer, if he buys that land and they got 20 shares, he buys the shares with them, turns it over. Bob's your uncle, you know, at that point. That's my concern. And
Headline, please.
thank you.
All right. I think the costs and how we're, the amount and the calculation is completely defensible. This has already gone through legal review. So with that said, I will entertain a motion.
Then I motion for, and this is my first time doing this, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do it right. For ordinance number 07-2026, and ordinance amending chapter 13 of the Wellington Municipal Code to authorize scheduled administrative updates to the cash in lieu rate, revise credited yield for NPIC shares, and discontinue acceptance of Colorado Big Thompson units for raw water dedication requirements.
Just add the word approve in there.
Oh, can I motion to approve that?
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call, please. Sorry, I thought you could read my mind.
No, sorry.
Oh,
Uh, Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett, Trustee Garcia,
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daly.
Yes,
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
thank you. Thank you. I said first name again. All righty, on to reports from our town attorney. Mr. Kumley, do you have any updates for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No report. We will be discussing some things in executive session.
Lovely. Ms. Garcia, our town administrator.
I feel like it's been a long time since we have met.
Oh, yeah.
So long. So highlights over the past month include attending the CML conference in Westminster with all of you. We've had town events such as 4th of July, Mingle on Main, all kinds of things going on. And I can speak to staff and all their work on all those events and things that are happening. These things would not happen without the amazing staff and team that we have. Looking forward, next week we have the VITA presentation that Megan mentioned. We'll have an update on Box Elder, the Box Elder Basin Regional Stormwater Authority, which will be more of a high-level overview of what the authority is, what its roles and responsibilities are, projects, things like that, to get the board up to speed as to that. We'll be talking about the Water Distribution Master Plan and Stormwater Project Prioritization. All water things. It'll be a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions on the reports for the staff communications? Okay.
I have one. How is for the ordinance for the e-bikes? Patty, you may be able to speak on it. But just curious how that is going as far as community feedback and or what the deadline for that as well, because I know we had a 30-day deadline after passing the ordinance. How close are we to that?
So it's in place now.
Okay.
We've passed the deadline. There's been some information put out that Larimer County Sheriff's Office helped us create to put out to the community to help people understand what the rules and regulations are. I'm not sure if Sergeant Downing would have anything extra to speak to on that. And as he comes forward, I have noticed there was a couple kids using their e-bikes through the park today, and I'm like, on the street, and they got on the street right away. So thank you, Sergeant.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add beyond what Ms. Garcia just said. However, I have seen a lot more compliance with the rules that we set forth. And the kids that I've run into have been respectful. I've seen very few kids running without helmets, and I've seen very few of them blowing through stop signs. Not to say that it doesn't happen, because there's always that 10%. But by and large, I'm seeing a lot more compliance with the expectations. Again, there are outliers, and we try to address those when we see them, but
Outliers with adults.
right.
I appreciate that. Again, I wanted to really touch on the fact that we are at that 30 days and it's been a while since we've met.
Yeah.
That the community, if anyone's listening, or I mentioned the rest of the town's listening, that they're getting that subtle reminder that that's a thing, especially because it's something that deals with the kids of the town. Like just as much communication about this, I think the best way.
Yes, sir. And when we see kids out on their e-bikes or e-motos, we do typically make some face contact with them and tell them how much we appreciate that they're following the rules. Those that aren't, we try to remind them the rules of safety and why they're there.
Yeah, I've also noticed a lot more with Great, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Smith.
Also included in your packet is a Colorado Open Records request report for Q2. Did you have a question? Oh, I thought I heard something. Okay. All right, board reports. We'll start with Trustee Cannon and go around the dais. Okay.
All right, our July post meeting is rescheduled. It will be tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And then don't forget, we have movie night this Saturday, the 18th, for all the kids in the park. It's going to be fantastic as always. I hope everyone can make it. There is a gala coming up for a food bank that I want people to be aware of. Tickets are on sale. I wish I wrote down the information more clearly. It's going to be at a country club and it's going to be fantastic. I will post on my trustee page the details, but every year they're one of these events and they are fantastic. It's a wonderful date night, a really great time, and a tremendous cause, and so much has been accomplished from prior years. So I really encourage you all, if you can, please join us.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Larimer County Regional Opioid Abatement Council meeting last month, as the rest of the board and myself were attending the Colorado Municipal League Conference. So I look forward to getting you an update on where we're on that next week after our meeting.
Thank you much. And a lot of people have been inquiring about Harvest. I almost said Harvest Farms, excuse me. So looking forward to hearing about that. My updates include just a little bit more on CML. CML was an amazing experience this year, and my biggest takeaway is some significant opportunities for revenue for the town of Wellington that I'm pursuing, and we'll hear more about. Also, just based on public outcry, I do want to notify the public that we will be discussing Flock on August 18th. So plan to attend then and discuss that with the sheriff. All right, moving along. Oh, please attend the Main Street Market on Fridays. It's everything I love about Wellington. It's music in the park with vendors and food, and it's just like the best thing ever. So Fridays, 4:30 to 7:30. Okay, thanks.
This Saturday from 10 to 2 at the Manor, there's going to be a market with community vendors, about 20 plus vendors. And then lunch catered if you buy tickets. The tickets are $45 a person. And a fashion show featuring some of our local boutiques like Thistle, fan favorite. This will all be to celebrate the survivors and women that have gone through battling cancer. And so just wanted to make people aware of that. If you go to the Manor, any of their social media pages, there are links to purchase tickets. And if you don't want to stay for the fashion show or lunch, just come on out and see all the great vendors from all of our fantastic people in our community. Thanks.
From the Main Street Board, Mayor Daley said, we are in full swing of the market, which is awesome. We are fully prepared with food trucks and vendors. I do believe we had an extremely successful 4th of July market that was very well operated and run, and I'm super proud of all of the work that goes into, sourcing vendors and vetting vendors and logistics and being there early to mark spaces, as well as, making sure that our vendors are happy. There was awesome traffic. The weather held out. Last year we got rained on the last hour. I saw that people were there all the way. It was promoted to be up until like 2 p.m. At 2 p.m., it was still full and people were still there. It encourages vendors so much to kind of stay put and hold out. We had fantastic music, and the Rockabilly Vixens were there as well for the car show. That was fantastic. I believe we are still open to gather a few more vendors for the rest of the season. So come and see what we have. I know that we've made a great effort into getting fresh produce, being EBT certified. That there's also a ton of work that has gone into that, but we have a really cool lineup of like milk, bread, honey, butter, which is awesome. If you need and they're all fantastic. So I like that they're all back to back and together. That is my update for the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have two things. First was I saw a presentation from the Front Range Passenger Rail District, and they are the ones that are in charge of the Fort Collins to Pueblo Express Intercity passenger train. They were happy to announce the name Coco for their train. However you feel about that.
Colorado
It's like
Connection,
Connect
something.
Colorado.
Yeah, something like that.
And they expect service to start in 2029. I forwarded the packet and the presentation to Ms. Garcia. If you guys are interested in seeing that, I think it's a really interesting opportunity. I want to say the Fort Collins train station is like the one by like Max Line Brewery on College, and I want to say it's on the north side, so it's like behind where that King Soopers or where that old Kmart used to be. That's where that train station is going to be. So be very interested to see if there's any sort of way Wellington can connect with that. And then I also met with a staff member from Congresswoman Boebert and had a very interesting conversation with her just about the things that the state and federal government can do for us as far as looking for grants, as far as just researching information for us, and potentially things that we can do to invite them to Wellington, get their support. I think that would be, there's a lot of things that we do that we could get some pretty cool recognition for. I think we're doing great things, and I would like to see us be talked about a little bit more. So all good stuff though.
Great. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody who participated and facilitated 4th of July festivities. God, it's like a well-oiled machine. It's so freaking amazing, and it's so much fun. And I want to say thank you also to the Wellington community for being flexible. Next year is going to be an all-out jam in our brand new downtown. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. So, but thank you all for still showing up and participating and having the best day of Wellington. So thank you guys.
Okay, one more that I
Yes,
forgot.
sure.
Sorry, I forgot. I don't want to forget. We had the inaugural piano painting. So all of the things that we've talked about in making Wellington just an attractive place and a culturally diverse and enriching place to land. They selected the artist to paint a piano. That piano is primed and already being painted, and it looks beautiful. So I'm super excited for people to go see it, see our artist that was selected, and to enjoy our very first piano in Wellington. Thank you.
I love
Wait,
the Wellington
someone
artist.
play it.
Yeah, that'll be good. All right. Will the clerk please read the title for item G1?
An executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 24-6-402, Sub 4, Sub B, for conferences with an attorney for the town for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions, and pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 24-6-402, Sub 4, Sub E, for determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators regarding the fence at 8132 4th Street.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
For the public, the board is now entering the executive sessions. Member of the public in person will be asked to leave and the virtual meeting will end. Thank you, sir.